In June 2025, the 5th International Meditation Conference was held at Zhichenkar in Thimphu, Bhutan, hosted by the Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies, marking a unique convergence of global perspectives. Held from the 3rd to the 6th, the event brought together meditation masters, scientists, philosophers, and practitioners from around the world. Under the theme Science, Meditation, and Mindfulness, the conference explored the meeting points between ancient contemplative practices and modern research. Topics ranged from neuroplasticity and AI to indigenous traditions, dream yoga, and ethical dimensions of consciousness studies. Across 4 days, participants shared insights, demonstrated techniques, and reflected on the evolving role of meditation in science, culture, and daily life. We now present to you 6 speakers we interviewed from the conference. Following his insightful presentation on the process-based approach to mindfulness training for mental health, we are so excited and very delighted to have you here on the set, sir. To start with, I would like to ask Professor to briefly introduce yourself to our audiences.
So I'm clinical psychology teaching at the university, but also having a practice with adolescents and with adults, mostly people presenting emotional disorders, anxiety, depression, but also all kind of emotional distress linked to identity problems or problem of this sort. And in terms of research, I'm particularly interested in emotion and in mindfulness, and to understand how mindfulness does affect psychological processes that are linked to psychopathology, so to psychological disorders.
Thank you so much, Professor. To start with, let's begin by exploring what motivated you to study how emotions affect mental health.
Oh, actually, I started as an emotion psychologist a long time ago, and as I was doing my research, my PhD was on trying to understand the relationship between bodily sensation and actual physiological changes during emotion. And this has so much clinical implication, both in terms of mental health or also in somatic health. So I started to be curious about the implication of my work. And I was also very lucky to have older colleague from another university who really encouraged me to train as a psychotherapist. And so I made the link. And this link was very easy to make because basically everybody who is presenting psychological distress or problem is presenting disorder with emotion or difficulty in regulating his or her emotion.
Professor, why did you decide to work with mindfulness-based treatments for mental health?
Again, it's meeting people. It's very auspicious meetings. At the time of my PhD and after my PhD, I was very interested in the work of a British colleague, which I think was a really great thinker, John Teasdale. And he had a specific model of emotion I was really interested in, so I visited him, and I discovered that actually he was a meditation practitioner in the Zen tradition for him, and he was really integrating that to his emotion model and to his clinical practice. And actually John Teasdale is one of the main scholars who brought mindfulness in the field of clinical psychology. He's one of the creators of the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And so very early, I mean, it was almost 30 years ago now, I talked with him about that, I read about this. Parallel to that, I had also an interest for Tibet and Tibetan culture. You know, in French we have Alexandra David-Néel, who is a very famous writer who really introduced all this concept in the Western world, and it just built it by itself.
You know, mental health and physical health, it's both very important, and especially mental health. I think it is very important for a human being. So my next question would be, how do you combine mindfulness and traditional therapy methods?
Actually, mindfulness comes very well with more standard or classical Western psychotherapy, especially cognitive and behavior therapy, because mindfulness addresses key processes that are also the object of cognitive and behavior therapy, like repetitive thinking, rumination, or attentional bias, or dwelling on certain illusion about the self and things like that. So actually it's touching so much what is so fundamental in our human values, both the psychotherapy approach and the mindfulness tradition and teaching, that the merging is very, for me at least intellectually and conceptually, it was evident.
Thank you, Professor. I would also love to know, what are some challenges and successes you have had while leading your university's clinic lab?
A main problem now that we have everywhere is that we see that mental health is deteriorating since 40 years actually, and mostly with the younger population. And that we have studies, it's a long time, that show that the main predictor of that is dissolution or poor social bindings, social ties among persons. And I think this touches really well to the notion of interconnectedness in Buddhism, where we are interdependency and and I think this is a big challenge, because we tend to conceive psychotherapy as a more individual form of intervention, which actually might be quite limited, because if the problem is interconnectedness and interdependency, actually we should think of intervention that include more the community. And if I have also a challenge to spot more specifically with the way we use mindfulness in the Western world, is that we lost sight of that interdependency aspect, which for me it's central, but which seemed to be diluted or even lost in the way we use it in the Western world. So I think we have a lot to learn from what you're doing in Bhutan about that, where I think you really have this conception of interdependency and interconnectedness.
Thank you so much, Professor. So, last but not least, what advice would you give to the young psychologists who want to do research and clinical works?
I think it's directly linked to what I've said, is that we have to extend our tradition from focusing on the individual into considering to the community.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.